Okay, so good morning everyone again. So as of today's lecture, we will continue with our Python programs practice. And today we'll be also covering some of the key functions which are provided by Python for working with strings. Because until now, what we have done is just trying to get a length of the strings and then work on that. But now we'll be working on actual strings internal data, and for that we'll be using some internal inbuilt functions as well. So these all things will be covered as part of today's topic. So let's start with like a first program which we can wrap up in the first part, and then we'll jump into the strings. So to continue with the programs, the next program we can do is program to find median of numbers. So what is exactly median of numbers, right? So let's assume we have a list called as my list or like numbers. And in these numbers, I have list of elements or like numbers presented it like 1, comma 4, comma 2, comma 5, comma 3, comma 6. So now if you see the numbers here are like from 1 to 6, but they are like in randomly placed order. They are not like in ascending or descending order. And as part of our job, what we need to do is we need to find out what is the median of this list of numbers, right from 1 to 6. Ideally, median is nothing but finding the middle element from your given list of numbers. And that middle element would be from either your number should be in like ascending order or descending order. So for example, here we have like 6 elements, right? So if we sort it, what should be our input list? Input list should be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 in ascending order. So once we get the sorted list, the next step we'll need to do is just pick the middle element out of it. Now the middle element out of it is 3, because here if you see the middle element comes as this space, because 3 on the left hand side and 3 on the right hand side. And if you want to pick the middle, we'll be doing this. We'll take 3 and 4 into consideration, and then we'll find out its midpoint, which will be 3.5. And if that 3.5 is converted to integer, it will fall back to 3. So ideally, if you see this one is this list is even in length, right? Because we have like 6 numbers present in it, and there are like even number of characters like elements present in it. That's why we'll be doing is we'll be taking 2 elements at a time, 3 and 4, which is part of the middle, and then we'll take the divided by 2 so that we get 3.5, and that 3.5 will be converted to integer, so our output would be 3. So basically our median would be 3 in this case. So that is how we can find out a median from a given list of numbers. Now this list of numbers contains only 6 numbers, which is like even in length. What about like if we have list of numbers and it contains odd in length? That means like let's say 7 elements, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So here our even in length logic would not work, because here we can directly identify what is the middle element for us, because this list is odd in length. Now since this list is odd in length, you can see 4 can be our middle element, because on the left hand side of 4 we have is 1, 2, 3, and on right hand side of 4 we have is 5, 6, and 7. So this middle element 4 is the appropriate median for us. So how our output should be is output equal to 4. So this way we need to find out the median of a given list of numbers. And that's what like a median is, like finding the middle element from a given list of numbers. And in order to find out the median, it is like a two-step process. So the first step process is we need to sort the list into an ascending or descending order. And once we sort, we'll have like numbers in either increasing or decreasing order like this. And once we sort, then the next step is try to see what is the length of your list. If your length of your list is even in length like this, in that case, you need to pick is two elements like 3 and 4, which are like your mid portion elements, and divide them by 2 and convert it into integer so that you get the 3 element, which is the lower number. But if you, after sorting, if your length of the list is odd in length, in that case, it is straightforward. Like you need to just pick the middle element and we don't need to take two elements for calculation. So looking at this logic and the list, how we can write up the program is straightforward now. So as usual, we'll create a function for it, which is called as median, and its input would be nums. So this would be our space for our logic. Then comes is our input list, which is this one, and we'll call the function. So this creates a structure of the program. Now, since we discussed it would be like a two-step process, what we'll be doing is the first step was sorted, right? Like to sort the list. Now to sort the list, we can either utilize our previously program, which was a bubble sort program to sort this list, or Python provides us an inbuilt function called as sorted, which is called as sorted. And in this sorted, if you pass our list would be sorted by default in ascending order. But if you want to sort in like, sorry, it will be sorted in ascending order. But if you want to sort in descending order, then we have to pass this parameter called reverse equal to true, which will sort our list in descending order. So since we don't even need to get our list into descending order, what we'll be using is just ascending, because either way it works. So we'll be storing that sorted list into another list variable name called as sorted nums. And here I'm calling sorted nums. So this function is going to convert my randomly placed numbers into a sorted order like this. And in order to verify that, we can verify by using a print command and print and see it, how it's looking. So if I run it, you see this is my randomly placed numbers and how my sorted numbers will look like. So this is how my sorted numbers are looking like in ascending order. And for descending order, we can say reverse equal to true. If you run it, it is going to sort in descending order. But either case, it is going to work for us. So we'll just keep in ascending order, which is 1 to 6. Now that completes our first step of our program, which is sorting the list into ascending order. Now the next step was we need to check if our given input list is even in length or odd in length. So how do we check that even or odd length? We can utilize the modulo operator, which we learned. And here we can say if length of my sorted numbers mod 2 equal to 0. So if we do a mod 2, that is modulo 2 operation, and the remainder is 0, that means it is even in length. And if it is even in length, what we wanted to do was we wanted to pick the middle two elements. So how do we pick these two middle two elements? So middle two elements can be picked like, let's say we create an index position and the middle element was nothing but length of the sorted numbers minus 1 divided by 2. So this like this formula which I've used is nothing but if you see length of sorted numbers. So what is my length of sorted numbers? It is nothing but 6, right? And we want to find is the index. So index of number 3 and 4. So we can use only one at a time, which is index 3. So since the indexes are starting with zeros and not like ones, we have given is -1. So that my length of this list is considered as 5, keeping the starting index as 0. And so on this part, my output is 5 and I'll do 5 divided by 2. So here I'll get is the quotient of this calculation. So 5 divided by 2 is going to give me 2. And that 2, if you try to find out index equal to 2, so what is the index equal to 2? So this is 0th index, this is first index, and this is second index. So that is how we got the first element, which is 3. And the next element would be like index plus 1. So that is how straightforward it is. So this index is going to help us pick the middle element, and the middle element was picked using this length of sorted numbers minus 1 divided by 2. So divided by 2 is going to give us in the middle portion. Now using this index, we can pick the two elements. So if my length of sorted numbers mod 2, which is even in length, equal to 0, that means I have is this list, which is even in length. I need to pick is 3 and 4. Now, how do I pick 3? 3 can be sorted numbers of index. So this sorted number of index is going to give me 3. And how do I get 4? I will get 4 as sorted nums of index plus 1. But here I won't be using like plus 1 like this outside because index value is 2. So index plus 1 is going to give me 3. So what is my third index? So 0, 1, 2, and 3. So I got the 4 in this variable sorted nums of index plus 1, and I got the 3 in sorted nums of index. So now I have these three, like 3 and 4. And as discussed, what we wanted to do was we need to add these two elements like 3 plus 4 divided by 2. So how can I add? I'll just need to place this plus 3 plus 4 divided by 2.0. All right, let's say 2. And I can just print it. So this print is going to give me the median. Okay, so this logic, let's try it out and see like if we are getting the expected output or not for even list, because as part of our logic, we are just providing us the list which is even in length. So this should work as it is. So if I run it, I'm getting 5. Now 5 is not expected because we have is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Length of sorted numbers mod 2 equal to 0, print sorted numbers of index plus index by 2 divided by 2. So now here our answer is not coming correct. So how do we debug this? So for debugging, what we can use is basically print statements. So print index I will do, which will help me understand what is the exact index. And then I will print these two variables also outside, which will help me understand if my both numbers are 3 and 4 or not. And once I get the values, then we can say like, okay, so that's the correct numbers which I have. So index is 2, sorry, index is 2, okay. And then we have is, okay, it's confusing for this one. Index is 2, then we have is 3 and 4. So we got 3 and 4, we added 3 and 4. So why it is not working is, let's see. So 7 by 2 is 2 5s are 6. Okay. So let's try it. 5.0. Why the output is 5.0? Because, okay. So actually we don't need to add this 3 and 4. We need to do is we need to add the indexes basically. And then once we get that final index, so I'm going to add index plus 1. Oh, I think that's, I'm just doing it back and it should be in brackets. I think that's why it was not working. Yeah, so 3.5 is coming. Okay. So now issue with our previous logic was, since we didn't give the brackets, what it was doing is it was taking 3 plus 4 divided by 2. So that's why it was happening is 3 plus 4 by 2 was 2. So that's why 3 plus 2, which became 5. And that's why we were getting 5. So ideally, that's why the next resolution what I did was just added a brackets here so that we add these two numbers like 3 plus 4 and then divided by 2. That gives the expected output. Now 3.5 is ideal median for a list of numbers because 6 and 3.5. And if you want to get just the numbers from the list, then we can just put an integer over here, which will convert that into our number. But the actual median is 3.5. So this is expected median. So this covers our sorting and then finding the median for even length in list. So what about odd in list, right? Like if the length of list is odd, how do I find the median? So this should be pretty much straightforward because here we are checking for even length. And if it is not even, then it will be always odd in length. So we just need to add is else condition. And this else is for odd. And what I was saying for odd was we just need to pick the middle element. And middle element for this one, if you see, there are like 7 elements, right? So length of 7 minus 1. So 6 divided by 2, which is 3. And if you go by indexes, 0, 1, 2, and 3, which gives us the exactly index for the middle element. So here we don't even need to add and divide by 2. We just need to provide the middle element, which is the 4. So for that, what we'll do is just print sorted numbers of index. This is going to give me the median if my list is odd in length. So how do I check that odd length? So I've added one more number, which is 7. And if I run it, I should see 4 as my output. So 4 is my output. So in order to make it a little fancy, we can just give a message like median like this. So we have a proper explanation here, like what the output is. Okay. Now if I run, I should see median is 4. And if I remove one element from it, then I have is 1 to 6. So I should have 3.5. So this is how we can calculate for a given list of numbers, finding the median out of it.
Guys, if you want your numbers, you can say to that sir then.
Yeah.
We can take the different numbers also, so that it would be more clear for you. Anyone?
Ma'am, can we take the first six odd numbers?
So first six odd numbers, right? So 1, 3, 5, 7, then 9, and then 11. I think so. These are like, yeah. All right. Yeah. Now if I run it, so here we are seeing like the length of list is even in length, right? Because we have like six, right? So this part of logic will be executed because length mod 2 equal to 0. So this if is going to execute. So if I run it, the median is coming as 6.0. Because if you see, ideally now I've placed all the numbers in increasing order. So the middle element is between 5 and 7. And since we have odd numbers, it is giving us the 6, which is the median for us. So it's working as per our like logic. So I think so
Yes, both
this.
of them clear, no?
Mhm.
Manisha,
Yes, ma'am.
any query? Okay, don't hesitate, ask the doubts, okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So now since we are clear, let me just save this in our notes and then we can move to our next program. So next program, let's see before I save. So next program, we can take like a small multiplication problem for Python, and then we can jump into a strings program. Now this multiplication program, even though it sounds easier, like to multiply two numbers, but it is going to be a little bit different because the difference here is going to be the inputs are not going to be your numbers, they're going to be strings. So usually what we say is we have two numbers, right? 3 or 4. So these two are like integer numbers. So their data type is basically int. And if we say like we want to multiply, we do is 3 into 4. So if I do 3 into 4, it's going to straightforward give me 12 because my numbers are like integers in format. But what about if my numbers are provided in like string format, like this 3 and 4? And if you try to do 3 into 4, you can see it is not going to give you 12 like this. So that is what the tricky part over this program is having, is like instead of having numbers, we'll be having inputs as like proper strings. So these strings should be multiplying and then giving the output in terms of like whatever the mathematical operation it should have. So let's write a program to multiply two strings and not numbers. So we'll start with the structure, which will write a function called as multiply. And here we'll be taking two inputs, a comma b, which will hold the strings. And then my input is going to be a equal to, let's say 2.5 and b equal to 2.5. And then I'll call the function which is multiply. And then we'll say pass these two variables a comma b. So ideally, if we don't even consider that string logic and if we try to multiply, let's see how that multiplication output will look like, right? Like if we do a into b, which will do is take 2.5 and 2.5 and pass it over here and it is going to multiply. So let's see how the output will look like. So, okay, so that's function name issue, which we can replace it. Now let's run multiply by non-int type of string. So this is how the output is throwing up. Like if we have the inputs as strings and if we try to multiply, it is going to give us a message like can't multiply sequence by non-int type of string because it's saying like these are strings. But if we remove this from the strings and if we just pass these numbers, we will see the proper multiplication happening, which is 6.25. But if we convert these integers into strings, what I'm getting is error because it cannot multiply because these two are like strings. Now the resolution over here is even though here these variables a and b are in string format, so basically my a and b are in string format, what we need to do is we need to convert these variables which are a and b into integer format or like a number format. And once we convert into a number format, then that multiplication is going to work. Now, even though this logic sounds a little bit lengthy or like conversion, it is pretty straightforward in Python. So how do we convert any string to another data type, right? Now here these are strings and I want to convert it into integer or like a float. Now since there is a decimal here, let's take float. Now float would work like I will just put brackets over these two, this variable a, and I will call a function called as float. So this float operation with open and close bracket and inside this I'm passing a variable. What it is going to do is it is going to convert your string, which is the string format, to float format. Now float is nothing but a number. So your string, which is 2.5 string, is going to be converted to an actual number, 2.5. Same way, we are going to convert our string for variable v into float format. And once the operation of float happens, it converts internally into number, and those two numbers then can be multiplied. Now, if I execute it, I should see the output, which is 6.25, because I took it as float. But instead of float, if I just do integer, right, which is one of the number, now here what is going to happen is this 2.5 is going to be truncated to this 2.5 is not going to be truncated because it is obviously going to throw us the error that there is a decimal in it and we cannot convert a string which has decimal into an actual integer which is like 2 because if ideally we wanted was to convert this 2.5 to 2. So how can that be done? Like even though it's 2.5 and 2.5, let's say we want to just have the decimal part, like non-decimal part, which is 2. So for that, we can do is we can have the original one, which is like float. So this float is going to convert the string to floats, and then this floats can be converted, or let's see if it's working or not, to integers. And this integers are basically converted. So if you see this internal part float converted from string to a float format, and then this outside int converted your float, which was 2.5, and it removed its decimal, which is zero point 0.5, and it gave you just 2. So that way we can utilize this inbuilt functions like int or float to convert from one format to another. Now, one of the goal of this program was to help understand how the casting operation works. So the process of converting from one data type to another data type, which is like string to number, like string to float, like string is one data type, float is another data type, right? So we converted a string to float, and then we converted that float to integer. This process of conversion is called as casting. And why we took this easier program of multiplication was just to understand how the casting works. So basically, this program is for understanding casting operations over strings. So that way we understood like how that casting operation works. So the way we called these functions, right, like float and passing an internal variable, this process is called as casting. And here we did is two castings. One casting was casting a string to a float, and then that float has been casted to integer. So that's why this 2.5 string was converted to number 2.5, and then this integer has casted it to just 2, and that's how the multiplication worked. So this program is basically helping us understand casting. Now there might be a quick question like if we pass just strings, right? Like let's say I have two more variables, C and D, and instead of passing numbers, let's say I pass a character like A and B, and I'll just pass C comma D, like the last two variables. And now if I try to multiply, I should get an error. Now why I got error is here I have strings, and even though these are strings, but not ideally numbers, right? Because these two was strings, but they were like ideally numbers present. But here these are like strings. Now what is happening is when we try to cast a string to a float, now what is the equivalent of a character A, right? We cannot get a equivalent of this character A, right? But there was an equivalent for this number 2.5, which was ideally 2.5 float number. But for A, we cannot do it. So that's the reason we'll be getting a message like you cannot convert string to a float A. But we did not receive this message when we were having ideally numbers present in the string. So if you look at this, casting is going to throw us errors when your inputs like this are not ideally numbers. So casting is basically work, or it will obviously work when the type of casting we are doing is in the alignment of the numbers or not. So in this case, we don't even need this casting operation. And if we just do print A into B, and let's see what the output is. Here also, we cannot multiply is because we cannot multiply any two strings, right? So these two strings are never ever going to multiply. But if they are like ideally numbers present in it, then they are going to multiply. And that's how this casting operation will help us. Because if you see ideally, and there are two strings, we cannot perform multiplication on it, right? Like because multiplication is something like an arithmetical operation and which works only on like numbers. And those numbers are like integers and floats as well as complex numbers. But we cannot perform any arithmetic operation like similar to like multiplication only and division on strings. But the only arithmetic operation which we can work on a string is the addition operation. Let's see if I just do add and if I run it, what the output is. So if you see, if I just do add instead of multiply, here I am doing is adding up. That is, I'm joining these two strings into a single word. So this is the only one arithmetic operator, which is plus, which works on strings, but the other operators like divide, right? Like it won't work. It will throw us an error. Even the modulo operator and all those other operators will throw us the error. So here what we understood is like two things. Casting will work only when we have like strings in the numbers present form, like present, sorry, casting will work basically when we have strings which contains numbers in it. And if we have strings which contains only alphabets or characters like this, then this casting is going to throw us an error. And the second point, what we understood is regarding the arithmetic operation. This plus sign, which is the plus arithmetic operator, is only going to work on strings. And that string can be anything. Now let's say we just have as A and B, which are like 2.5 and 2.5. This is going to give us concatenation if you see. So 2.5 and then second 2.5. So here they are just adding up. But if we have other arithmetic operator like multiply, it is going to throw us an error. So these are two important things to be noted, that plus is going to be only worked on strings and other arithmetic operators are not going to work. And then the casting thing which we discussed, like conversion will happen only if the strings contain ideally the numbers in it. And the number was because we had like these inbuilt function called as int and float to convert. So I'll just on comment these two things, which will help us understand how the casting works. So I hope there should be no doubt with this one. And if there are any doubts, you can ask me now.
Sir, no doubt.
Okay. So since there is no doubt, what we'll do is now, I think the session is almost getting over. We'll drop off and then we'll rejoin again on like a
Yeah,
new
I'm
different link.
sending you the new link. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.